I was like, clarity is really valuable, but so many people weren't following through on what they clarified. Core purpose, like grand mission in life. What do they think they're on the planet to like do and be? But this is where the identity piece came in,
Hmm.
is a lot of people would then need to embody basically like a new person. Not entirely, but they had to shift either certain skills, certain beliefs, work through certain doubts about who they were and what they could accomplish in order to now live this new like life they wanted to claim, right? And realize this new vision. And I'd say maybe about like 10 to 15% of my clients would be able to kind of really embody that and move into that new direction. And a lot of people would then just start to talk themselves out of it, hedge, edit, make it something smaller, be like, okay, let me just make a baby step, which was valuable. So I don't want to discount that. And that's why I say it was
Yeah.
more me. I was like, I don't actually want, I'm not here to serve just the baby steps.
This is Leadership Sound Bites. Real leaders, real moments, real growth.
Welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with my super special guest, who I think Raphael connected us, right? And then it's so funny. I think of the seven whatevers or the eight or six of Kevin Bacon, right? The degrees of
Oh, the
whatever.
6 degrees.
So
Yeah.
it was Meredith Mangold, I think, connected me to Raphael. Raphael
Mm,
I met, and then he connected me with you and someone else. So it's just like, it's this cool freaking network that
yeah.
just like, boom, spans out. So
Yeah.
Pam Yang and I are going to have a chat today, and she's an executive coach and strategic advisor in New York City. And I know you just said you got back from LA, so the weather is just a bit different.
Very. LA was really difficult to pack for because it was like 72 during the day, like 45 at night. And I was like, I feel like I have to bring everything from summer clothes all the way to full on winter clothes. So it
Yes.
was a confusing trip to pack for. And I haven't been to LA at this time of year in a long time. But I came back to like 22 and windy. So yeah.
It's so funny you talk about that because I'm visiting my daughter right now in San Diego, and where home is, Northern California, it's been in the 40s, overcast.
Yeah.
And I had the same thing when I'm looking, and I literally have a suitcase full of summer
Yeah.
and sweaters and other stuff because, to your point, that's the weather.
Yeah. Every
So
kind
it's
of
like,
layer.
okay, yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Um,
So you and I met and connected and just freaking chatted like crazy. There's so much synergy. I love the space that you're in with coaching and how you got there.
mm,
Because to me, that's an interesting story about pathways and where you landed. And I think a lot of it speaks to your approach.
mm.
So do you mind just like starting there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do kind of the overview version.
Okay.
Um, so I think there's so many connecting threads that when you look back on your life, you're like, oh, this makes perfect sense. But there's a few core threads, both from the career that I had in corporate, but also kind of where I started as a kid and why I was driven into this work to begin with. And the relationship with my mom was single parent, only child, and we had a lot of conflict in terms of how we both saw the world. And she
Hmm.
saw it from this very like anxious, stressful, fear of uncertainty, fear of the unknown kind of way, and was very controlling, wanted to control as much as possible so she
Hmm.
didn't have to, she would deal with less uncertainty in her mind.
Hmm.
Right. And I was
Yeah.
like, I want to explore this. I want to do this. I love sports. I want to go after sports. Like it was very feeling oriented. I was like, I feel this. I want to go for this. And so we saw the world completely differently. And through a series of events, I think that happened, in a concentrated way when I was really young. I understood that I was like, oh, I can trust my mom to clothe me, bathe me, like, feed me, all those things. But our experiences together kind of showed me like I didn't have to listen to you when it came to kind of the career paths I chose, how I
Hmm.
lived, because I saw how she lived and I was like, this is stressful, this is anxious. I don't feel good being in this environment with you because I absorbed her anxiety and her
Yeah.
stress. And I
Well,
was
we
like, I
do.
don't, right, of each other, of the people we're with.
Hmm.
And this is where burnout at work happens because you're so absorbing everyone else's energy. And so I felt very freed by that when I was younger of like, oh, I actually have to pursue my own path because I can't follow this path laid out for me because I see the end result that you are currently living, and I don't want that end result.
Yeah.
And I saw adults around me where I was like, okay, I don't want those end results. So that I felt like put me on a path that was a little different than certainly other kids who were still like, okay, how do I manage my expectations, right? Of my parental expectations, societal expectations,
Yeah.
and especially being a single parent, it was very much like, oh, I actually can just fully pursue my own. It's just one person and me, so I'll choose my path. Um, and I was fascinated by like why people did what they did and not just the psychology behind it, but the experiences people have and why that carries into what they do. And so I very fortunately started in brand strategy. And I feel like if any function within an organization, maybe separate from full-on people-related functions, it allowed you to really focus on, okay, why do consumers, why do our clients, why do the people we want to attract think what they think, do what they do, behave how they behave, right? And how can we get them to, see what we're trying to help them see with our product or service, whatever.
Hmm.
And I was also really lucky because I pursued sports because that was my passion. So I was like, I just want to work in sports. I had no idea of where, so I landed in brand strategy, and that was ideal. And so from that, I had various roles across strategy, across marketing, but it was always in that realm: brand, marketing, communication, strategic planning. So the mix of strategy and marketing of both like what are the problems we're trying to solve? Let's get at root cause and let's figure out the
Hmm.
right solution, which to me is where the best strategy comes from. If you really look at all the dependencies. And brand and marketing, if you think about it less from, I'm trying to sell you a thing, but rather, how do we communicate who we are, why we exist, the essence of like this company, and then maybe a specific product, how do we get that across, right? And how do we distill it to the most valuable pieces so that people can understand the most valuable pieces.
Hmm.
And so all those kind of core principles together, um, to me, like led me to kind of do this work, which is the same. Like I see today's work the same as the previous work, except instead of a company of why do you exist? What is your core value? And how do you want to share this with the world? And get what you want, really, to make money. For individuals, it's no different of why do you think you exist? What are you here for? What do you
Hmm.
value? And how do you want to realize that in the world, right? And how do you want to share that with the world?
Well, and
So,
I hear purpose in that too, Pam. It's
mm-hmm,
like, for me, it's like, what are you driving toward, what it is? And the word that I wrote down when you were talking too, even though you were talking about corporate world, it's about connection.
mm-hmm,
So it's about being able to communicate, and not just in words, but in feeling and behaviors and the other. So all the stuff's aligned, right? It's like,
mm-hmm,
this is who I am. This is who I say I am. These are the behaviors. These are the things. And these are the feelings that I want to feel and the feelings that I want someone else to feel. And so it's
yeah,
that connection piece,
yeah,
to where we can see ourselves in someone else, or at least see something that we want to be around.
yeah,
Because we've all met people that we go, oh, those are not my people.
mm-hmm, yeah. And you know right away by certain signals, right? And
Mhm.
so the core part of it, I mean, you pinned it with purpose, but the other core part is the identity component, right? Whereas with a company, you're being very intentional with the brand, you're being very thoughtful about, and hence the whole brand strategy, like
Mhm.
world, you're being very intentional about like who are we and what are we communicating, right? And sometimes with ourselves, we don't go through that same process.
Mm-mm.
And there might be moments in time where our world is upended, right? There's some massive challenge that comes into your life that forces you to look at some of those things.
Yes.
Yeah, but the root of this work is all oriented around like your sense of identity and how you relate to it, and how you understand your value and purpose. How do you understand your reason for being, right?
Hmm.
And then how do you connect that to outside of you, other
Hmm.
humans, the external world? So yeah, you hit absolutely like the purpose connection, and then I just wanted to add the identity piece because that's kind of the
Yeah.
given, but
Yeah.
that's actually the piece that I end up working the most with people on. Yeah, is really understanding that and how that translates into their behaviors, their actions, their results.
It's interesting when you talk about identity. I just got off a Tony Robbins event, Date with Destiny. And it went total of 8 days because it was leadership mastery part of it. And so normally it's a 6-day event. And then I've been listening to another podcast that with James Clear, and he talks about identity.
Mm,
Um, and I think the message here too, when you're talking about strategy indicates there's some intention. Like I'm not just stumbling into something, right? I mean, I'm
mm-hmm,
I'm going to think about this thing. And I
mm-hmm,
think there's so many times in life that people don't realize that they're owning an identity that they didn't really consciously pick. It's
mm-hmm,
just sort of, it's something that, it became them for whatever reason. And then they're not feeling great about the life that they're living.
mm-hmm.
So when you started working, because you and I chatted, and I take notes, but I don't come with notes, right? So you're pulling and teasing out stuff of the conversation. There was an evolution to what you do and how you work with people, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
at first was the strategy piece,
Yeah.
but there was a realization that that wasn't enough.
Yeah. And it wasn't enough for me personally first. And I
Yeah.
was realizing the gap in how I was serving my clients because like a good, strategist, before I started my practice, I got really focused on like, okay, what is the problem set that I want to focus on? And what have I lived such that I can really speak to it and not only speak to it with, experience and have successes, but also like with a passion, like with a personal connection that I care for. And I loved the conversation I was having at the time, right when I was leaving corporate. I'd spent like 16 years, in and out of corporate, and the out was either to do my own things or consult or whatever, take some time off. And the conversations I was having at the end of my corporate career were a lot of friends who were starting to be like, okay, we're 10, 15, 20 years into our career, do we want to do this anymore, right? Like we're
Mhm.
successful on paper, but like inside there's something not disconnected or missing. And so the conversations I was having was about clarifying that kind of stuff. It's like, who are you? What path do you want to go on if not this? Right. And especially in our 20s and 30s, as we get into our work, and then later into our late 30s and 40s, you start to own your work identity. And depending on how you've related to it, it might become this really entrenched thing of who you are is what you do. Right.
Mhm.
And so those conversations really started to center around, okay, if not this path, then what? So what's next? Right. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of the perfect space I can operate because I've done this my whole life in strategy. I've done it for myself over and over as I iterated through the various phases of thinking something was it and realizing, okay, it's not quite this. So what is it? So it started with clarity on what you want, clarity on what's next, clarity on what direction to even move in when you are considering either too many options and you're terrified of making the wrong choice and people are terrified of wasting time, or they have no idea where to go. They're like, I'm a blank, it's a blank page. I don't even know where to begin.
Mhm.
And so after doing that for a few years, I think I started my practice in 2019. It was 2023 when I was
Mhm.
like at the point of trying a different scaling model. Because I had like grown it one-on-one. It was really solid, but I was like, okay, I think this group thing could be the next phase for me to try. And I was growing that. And as soon as it started to work and I started to get more clients, and I was like, wait. Like, I don't know if I want to commit to this model because it was the previous focus on clarity.
Mhm.
And as it was growing and I was realizing I had to then commit to delivering this for that many more people, I was feeling a ton of resistance within. I was like, okay, I have to figure
Mhm.
out what this is for me. And what I over a period of time realized over the course of 2023, I was like, clarity is really valuable, but so many people weren't following through on what they clarified. Core purpose, like grand mission in life. What do they think they're on the planet to like do and be? But this is where the identity piece came in, is
Mhm.
a lot of people would then need to embody basically like a new person. Not entirely, but they had to shift either certain skills, certain beliefs, work through certain doubts about who they were and what they could accomplish in order to now live this new like life they wanted to claim, right? And realize this new vision. And I'd say maybe about like 10 to 15% of my clients would be able to kind of really embody that and move into that new direction. And a lot of people would then just start to talk themselves out of it, hedge, edit, make it something smaller, be like, okay, let me just make a baby step, which was valuable. So I don't want to discount that. And that's why I say it was
Yeah.
more me. I was like, I don't actually want, I'm not here to serve just the baby steps. I'm here
Yeah.
to help people really step into that piece. So, how do I combine the clarity of purpose piece, clarity of mission, clarity of what's next with all the work required when you have to embody a new identity, right? And become a
Hmm.
new person. And so it was a matter of figuring out, okay, how do I now find people who are ready to do both pieces of those work, both those pieces of work,
Yeah.
or understand that it's oriented around the identity piece. Because if people aren't ready to go there, you can't make them, right? Even if you
Mhm.
see that the stuckness is there, yeah, you can't force people down a path of becoming a new person.
So what have you seen since that? I'm gonna say that additional aspect or element, because you're right. There are people that can see it, get clarity, and they just keep going. They're just like, I'm all in. And other people have this limiting belief that, by
Hmm.
the way, you could have had with your upbringing. I
Hmm.
mean, you literally were raised by someone who was fear-based, protecting you. It's you two against the world. She's gonna, it's that kind of mentality. And yet you went, yeah, I don't, I don't want to do that way. That's not
Hmm.
who I want to be and step into. And there's a lot of kids in that situation that wouldn't have made that bold choice.
Mm, mm,
So there is a small percentage of the population that says, yeah, I'm going for it.
hmm. Yeah.
So what do
And
you do with people? What kind of shift? What have you seen?
one thing that I would add to what you just said, which I so
Yeah.
appreciate you like being, drawing the threads on, and seeing in my experience is that was a survival tactic in itself, right? Like the notion that I had to pursue my own path because I was like I saw my mom's and I felt the experience of that life, and I was terrified of living that. And
Yeah.
so in its own way, it became its own survival driver of like, well, if it's not that, like I've got to figure out something else, right? Because I've always had that in the back of my mind as the life unlived, right? The life less lived and the life lived in fear. And so I'm fortunate that that was the path. I feel fortunate that
Yeah.
that's the path I chose, but it was also rooted in survival, which most of our choices are, especially when we're
It's but it I here's the thing that keeps coming up for me when you say that, right? Because
young.
in your mind you're like, it was survival tactic. It was just what it is. And I'm in my head and heart feeling you had an identity, and I'm going to go back to this rooted identity stuff because this is what's coming up for me. You had an identity that was not that.
Mm,
You were rooted in that.
mm,
What your identity really was, grounded in it. That you made you go, that's
mm,
not, no. Um, and I'm going to say that, I mean, I've seen it with people that there's a lot of kids in that situation, especially kids who don't have siblings around, right?
mm,
That aren't so grounded in their identity, that's
mm,
so different from what their circumstances are.
mm, mm-hmm,
That I think for you, where you call it fear or whatever it was, I can't go down this path. I think it was this, you've got this strength in you that said, this is not who I am. This is
mm,
who I am. And so for me, it's almost this conviction and courage because you
mm,
freaking blazed your own trail. You had no role models for the
mm,
path that you took,
mm.
except what was inside.
Mm, mm. Thank you. Thank you for framing it that way. I really appreciate it. Um, I think you're right because there are elements of our identity, consciously or subconsciously, that we choose, right? And especially when you're younger, you're not very conscious of, oh, I'm making this choice for this reason, and this is why. You just do.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was as far as far back as 10 is when I remember like that being a core like conviction internally. Um, and this kind of is a perfect segue to your question of how do you work with people now? I think the vetting in the beginning has completely shifted because I talk about clarity as just the first step. And the second piece is connected to what you had just raised, is I talk about it as a return. I'm like, we're
Hmm.
returning to the parts of you that were always there that maybe did not have the space and the room to be, right? We're not accepted. We're kind of criticized. And for whatever reason, you felt like you had to hide those parts.
Hmm.
And so in the opening conversation, when I meet people of like determining fit, seeing if this could work, I kind of like emphasize, I'm like, this is the work, right? And the clarity is actually the easy part. It'll happen quickly. It's only a few steps, right? We can do that pretty fast. Um, and the emphasis is going to be on the second part. Right. And so most people now, when I used to talk about it as wondering what's next, clarifying your path forward. Now I talk about it as like when you are struggling with who you are, right? When you have this identity, when you're faced with, whoa, like the life that I've walked to this point, this is no longer. And this is a turning point, not in just the path I take, but who I've been is no longer working, right?
Hmm.
And not every part, just certain parts. And
Hmm.
so now, because of how I position, it also brings a different person in. But in the beginning, I do very much talk about the fact that the core of the work is the return work, right? Becoming a
Hmm.
new person. But really, it's about returning to the person you maybe never had the space to explore
Hmm.
and embody.
Or the courage.
Yeah, or the
It
courage.
it
Yeah.
it takes courage. It takes commitment. It takes because I think a lot of times what happens is, especially children, as they're growing up, to your point, we're so bold and courageous and everything in the beginning.
Fearless.
There was one of the participants at this event that I was in. We were in breakouts, and this is how quickly it happens, right? And he was talking about, as he was remembering back, one of the activities was our earliest memory, right? Closed eye. Let's go back to your earliest memory. And he was this um, uh, vibrant, just very adventurous kid. And he said his earliest memory was when he was disciplined, punished, and stuff. His mother was just livid with him. And then we went back to the memory right before that, right? What is the memory before that? Even though that was your earliest memory, what happened as you start to unlock? And he remembers himself being adventurous, exciting, vibrant, all the stuff. And he said he was 4. And essentially, they lived in the city, they had an apartment, and the mom was going to go pick up the brother from school. I'm going to go, then they walk to go. And she's like, or he asked, can I go? Can I go pick him up? And so the mom said yes, thinking the two would go. I guess he darted out the door and ran down the street and crossed streets and all this stuff. He's 4 years old,
Yeah.
all excited to go get his brother, right? Because there's no
Yeah.
fear
Yeah.
until there is.
Yes.
So he got there, school wasn't out yet, he waited, and then I guess his mom showed up and just disciplined,
Mm.
spanked, yelled, all the
Mm.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
He called it hitting, but and he's from another country, so it was just discipline. I mean, he got spanked, she was livid. He said from that moment on, he shut down. He was fear-based, he wasn't adventurous, he wasn't, and
Mhm.
to his adult life, I mean, there's this adult sitting there that now part of his values is adventure,
Mm.
realizing where that came from because he didn't know where it came from because we block it.
Mhm.
And so to your point, it's like, how do we get back to the point of the stuff that's limiting us from living our full life
Mhm.
and be able to go either push past it, unlock it, let it go, understand from an
Mhm.
adult perspective what happened. Because an adult, he can look back and all of a sudden he's looking at his mom going, she did it because she was scared to death. She was, I mean, like I left the house, I was just gone. And so all that wall of emotion came out as discipline, punishment,
Mhm.
when it came from a place of love.
Yeah.
And he said, I see that now as an adult.
Yeah.
So, I can let it go. And now we have to consciously, to your point, step in and do different things because
Yeah.
we have all these things in our brain that go, danger, Will Robinson, it's not safe. You can't go here. And so he was living life from that place.
Yeah. And once that becomes entrenched up here, it's
Mhm.
constantly reinforced, right? Consciously or subconsciously. Or yeah, consciously or subconsciously.
It is the subconscious mind that's doing it
Yeah.
because it's controlling 95% or more of what we do
Yeah.
in the background, and we just don't realize it. And then we
Yeah.
start owning it as identity because people go, I'm not adventurous.
Yes.
I'm not this. I am this.
Yes.
And it's like, please watch
Yes.
the words that you put after those sentences.
Yes.
Because with enough repetition and enough emotion, it literally is an identity of ours. And our
Mm-hmm.
brain will do everything in its power to make sure what we do and our experiences and what we say align with our
Mm-hmm.
identity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's
It,
what he was living.
that reminds me of something you brought up that was really actually central to our first conversation
Yeah.
around the power of words and how we shape things, right? Or how we basically shape our realities from
Mhm.
how we think, the words we use to think, certainly, but then the words we use to express, and how quickly things can shift when you use different language, right? And the
Mhm.
value of language. And so I know both you and I resonated really deeply on that, because the shifts that can happen for people, and this might kind of be a next layer into answering your question of how I work with people now, is we start with like establishing this core foundation just so they have something to ground themselves in, especially when people are like, wait, who am I? Like to date, if all the things that I've been doing like aren't quite working, or I'm not sure what is and what isn't working anymore, we do like some clarity work to create a foundation from which they can ground themselves that feels true to them, to their dreams, their hopes, their beliefs, their principles, so that when they are in that spiral of like, wait, who am I? They've got that to come back to. But then
Yeah.
the practices are very similar to what you had shared, right? Around catching ourselves of how we think about things, how we speak about things. And it's reps. Like I think about it as no different than like going to the gym or getting exercise, right? Because the mental muscles that we've built up, the thought muscles that we've built up that are really strong over decades of reinforcement, we're trying to reprogram them, right? And so it has to start with the daily little things that we say to ourselves, that we do, that we think sometimes are innocuous. But that's where actually a ton of power
Mhm.
exists, and where a lot of shifts can start to happen really quickly
Mhm.
when people start to recognize how the words, beliefs, behaviors in their everyday life contribute to these really deeply entrenched things. And the
Mhm.
minute they start to shift a little bit of those behaviors and words, they start to release themselves from the previously really entrenched thing and to move it towards the thing they want to embody.
Mhm.
Also using words, behaviors,
Yeah. Well,
action.
and it's so funny. And people, the my experience has been that we don't give enough, we don't pay enough attention to those words, and they're just like
Mhm.
throwaways. I was in a with a group, facilitated a breakout session with a group of leaders in government, the government space, the public sector. And the discussion was around, and I'm so acutely aware of language
Mhm.
that people use as just like throwaways, and they act like, oh, that's no big deal. Leaders describe stuff. This one particular leader, it was like she said, things aren't normal anymore, right?
Mm.
We're in a storm,
Mm.
and I'm like, people don't realize that that stuff and how you're describing it sets you up for, think about if you're literally in a storm, are you relaxed?
Mhm.
Or are you spidey sense waiting for danger or what's happening, right? Because a tree could fall or the power could go out, or you've got noises that you typically don't hear. You're not relaxed. You're on
Mhm.
edge.
Mhm.
When we describe life that we're living right now as not normal, then you're at some point you're telling yourself that we're going to go back to something that was. And
Mhm.
so the reality of it is this is normal.
Mhm.
This is life. I mean, we're not going to go backwards to before COVID. It's not going to happen.
Mhm.
So and we're not going to unwind and people are magically no longer going to be using AI.
Mhm.
It's not going to happen. This is normal. And normal is change and evolution and
Yeah.
all the stuff. And so when we start stepping into where we don't describe ourselves of we're in the middle, we're in the eye of the hurricane.
Yeah.
What? I
Yeah.
mean, so you got the calm, but you know that there's hurricane around and hurricanes don't just sit in one place.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so pay attention to this language that doesn't
Yeah.
have you feeling relaxed and in
Yeah.
charge.
Right.
And those are
The in
the
charge
words.
piece. Yeah, and the in
Yes.
charge piece is so important because storms, hurricanes, not within your control, right?
No, no.
External forces.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when,
Yeah.
if you're using language like that, pay attention to it. And I joke with people, but I'm serious to say awareness is the first step in recovery. Recovery being, if you want to your point, go back to what you uncover what you previously were, who you previously were. You want to identify, hey, there's an opportunity to live life better, happier, more at ease. I'm going to call that recovery, right?
Yeah.
I'm getting better and coming back from something. Awareness of what's happening in the language is important. And a lot
Yeah.
of times people can't see it. And so here's what
Yeah.
I tell them. If you're using language that does not make you feel empowered to move forward, those are lies. Okay. So frickin' chuck them to the sidewalk because then you can look around for other language that has you feeling empowered. And I'm not talking about skipping down the sidewalk going, oh my gosh, life is so wonderful. But it's about feeling like, hey, I do see a path forward. I can
Yeah.
move forward. I'm feeling optimistic about something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have no
Absolutely.
passion around that stuff, by the way. Can you tell?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you understand kind of the complexities that sit all in and around it, right? And you
Yeah.
understand how it affects so many things on a much deeper level and
Yes.
people's futures down the line, right? Because they're speaking it into their reality.
Existence. Yes.
Yeah, and they're believing it into their reality. And so you can like kind of all the steps forward that this is going to go down. And so of course it's like, "Oh, I want to keep you from like going down those paths." Yeah, I struggle with that sometimes with clients where I'm like, "Oh, you can see something so clearly. You can just see this piece." But you can't drop it in and have them realize it, right? Like there's only so much you can do to help someone see something. Not to say that I see it perfectly, but at least like, hey, let's explore this thing that I'm seeing
Hmm.
that I think could clarify a lot for you. But if they're unwilling, because I've had clients who are like so entrenched in a
Oh,
place
yeah.
and it becomes and you have to create the safety, right? Which I think a lot of the skill in coaching is how do you, with each person who is so different, who responds to stimulus differently, fear differently, identity
Hmm.
differently, how do you create the pathways for them to explore it so that they're not in this seized state? Right?
Hmm.
Because when you talk about some of this stuff and it's so deep to their experience, if it is identity or if they feel very strongly about the emotions, it can't be denied, right? It can't be rejected in terms of what they're experiencing. You have to find a way to bridge the gap from, okay, you're here now. How do we
Hmm.
move you or help you see this space that you could move into? And for
Hmm.
each person, this is where I find it to be like so fascinating and why the work is so enriching and valuable is because I'm like, each person is a puzzle, right? And there's no one way you can take people to the places they truly want to go. You have to find the pathways that are going to work best for them, that
Hmm.
feel safe for them, that don't
Hmm.
feel like they're being triggered, but also that makes the insight sustainable and lasting. Right?
Hmm.
Because I found when people are like, "Oh, you're right." I'm like, "No, no, it doesn't matter if I'm right, right?
No,
Like, I
because
don't want
that's
you
the
to
brain.
think
That's the brain. That's the brain.
right.
Yeah.
I don't want you to think I'm right because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. It only matters if you feel that it is, right? Or
Hmm.
that we're talking about a truth that you recognize as well. It doesn't matter if you just think, oh, maybe what I'm saying is true, because that won't get them to the transformation.
Yeah, it's interesting. The easiest, and I'm air quoting easiest, way that I found in dealing with people where that language has become the identity is just simply ask the question because we've labeled it and put it in a bucket, a little package, right? Oh,
Yeah.
ba-da-da-da-da-da, it's a storm.
Yeah.
Da-da-da-da-da, it's a hurricane.
Yeah.
Da-da-da-da, it's burnout or it's overwhelm, right? And so then all of a sudden it's I am here. I'm in the storm. I am burnout. I am stressed out. Is what are you seeing, feeling, experiencing?
Mm-hmm.
What is actually observable and happening around you? Not the
Mm-hmm.
label,
Mm-hmm.
but the things. So that that to your point, because we're not going to deny what you're experiencing. What we're going to do is have you use a different way to describe it
Mm-hmm.
and describe it to the things that are actually happening. Like one
Yes.
client, was overwhelmed and it was like I've got a new job and there's a lot of challenging things happening. Okay, great. So
Yeah.
what other way could you describe it besides I'm overwhelmed?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, there's a lot of new and different things happening. And she grins. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, there you go. So
Yeah.
2 weeks later, we meet. She's got new language to describe because
Yeah.
she's got an awareness we planted a seed.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's different? She said, everything,
Yeah.
literally everything.
Yeah.
From changing the label that you put on it, which by the way is a highly charged label of
Yeah.
overwhelm, to actual things that are observable that your brain goes, well, we can solve for that.
Yeah.
Because you can solve for new things, you can solve for different, you can solve for challenge.
Yeah.
But when you label it burnout, you've all of a sudden put yourself in this box. It's like, I can't deal with this. I'm drowning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm drowning. I mean, people have said that too.
Yes,
It's like, I'm
absolutely.
drowning. Think about that. Do you feel
Yeah.
safe and secure when you're drowning? No.
Yeah. You sharing this story is making me think about another parallel that probably is really similar in our approaches. Is so often when people are facing a challenge, like the overwhelm, like the burnout, uh, they often feel like I just have to push through, right? Like grit your teeth, push through. This is just a period, and sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's a period of time that you're going to have to just like ride the waves.
Like I had a
But
friend say, she'd go, put your big girl panties on.
right,
It's
right.
like,
But the concept is so oriented around like you need to like do different, right? You need to grow up. You need to like embody this, other skill set, whatever it may be. But it often feels very like forceful, right?
Mhm.
Of like charge, and very masculine. And the thing that I often like try to stress with clients is you don't have to do that, right? Like, how can we find you will move through this thing because you have to. This is a challenge you're dealing with. So you will find a way to move through it. I find the easiest way to move through it for people is how can we find the joy, the curiosity, the openness to like possibility, right? And because it's not to say that it won't be hard. We can acknowledge the fact that this is a hard thing, right? But also other things are true, like you said, new, different, exciting, right? And so how do we bring the full understanding of what this experience is into it? And how do we bring your full skill set? And how do we find the pathways forward that are rooted not in this aggressive push forward of like
Mhm.
putting your big girl pants on, putting your big boy pants on,
Yeah.
but rather what will be a joyful path forward for you, right? How can we see the more curious, exciting parts of this and use that as a way forward? Use that as the fuel rather than some other reserve you're going to have to tap to like
Mhm.
propel you through this horrible thing, right? And so I think our specific tactics might be different, but it sounds like our core
Yeah.
principles are very similar, which is
Yeah.
how do we shift how we understand this thing from this painful, negative, horrible thing to something that is also open, curious, wonderful, exciting, new, possibility oriented. And that opens people up in a different way to
Mhm.
understand a problem.
Yeah. I could freaking talk to you forever, and I think you made a comment about that
Yeah.
before. I would love to do more things like this on themes for people. It would
Mm.
be kind of fun, Pam, to unpack, like, here is a way to do this. Here's this thing that you may up against, but here's a way to confront it because I think,
Yes.
or to deal with or navigate through or lead through it
Yeah.
because there's a lot of humans that I come across that we're in we've been in times of change for a long time. Globally, there's a lot of change happening. And what I find is that the people that I'm in a room with, they have the experience of their silo that they're in. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times they're telling themselves that this stuff's happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
And part of my what I bring to the table too is to let them know because I'm dealing with organizations, across the globe, is this isn't just you. This isn't just your org. This is universal. We are rapidly changing.
Mm-hmm.
There's challenges that organizations are preparing themselves for and you for to be able to navigate through, to be able to stay relevant in
Mm-hmm.
what's happening in the world economy.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see organizations making really tough decisions,
Yeah.
I said, the view that I have for people is understand, I would want an organization that's being proactive and making those decisions so we can stay relevant if you're a W-2 employee versus someone who's ignoring
Mm-hmm.
what's on the horizon and going,
Mm.
we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So it's the flip of the view that you go through, but I think it would be
Yeah.
kind of fun to carve out just techniques that people can
Yeah.
use to navigate their own journey,
Yeah.
because a lot of times we're only counseling ourselves.
Yeah.
But I appreciate this time. I want to be respectful of your time. As we wrap up this section, because I want to
Mm-hmm.
invite you again, um, what are one or two things that you'd love people to walk away with from our conversation today?
Mm. Well, since we're on the theme, building off of what we just talked about, but this is also really core to what I wish for people is to lean into the joy and look at, yes, there will be challenges, but I kind of think of it as like a treasure map, right? So if you are on like this full-blown like treasure hunt and adventure, and that is like your life, right? The life is the adventure. The treasure map isn't there to kind of say, here are the exact steps you take, right? It's just roughly like we think it's there. We think this is where the vision, mission work, all that comes in. We think it's like over there in that horizon, we should head in that direction. And along the way, you're going to have incredible stories. You're going to meet incredible people. You're going to have really difficult challenges to face in order for you to get there. But the framing of it is like your life is a treasure map for you to go explore and also map out towards like your vision. It adds an element of like levity and adventure and almost brings a little bit more of that kid-like wonder to how we understand the path that we're on.
Mm-hmm.
Because so often, I think, to your point about what's happening in the world and how we've received that, we often speak about it as like, oh, it's 2025. This shouldn't be happening, right? These things shouldn't be in existence. We should have solved for this by now. But I'm like, but it's still humans, right? Like we're still greedy, we're still insecure, we're still terrified, we're still doing all these things out from those really primal places.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of viewing the world as like, fuck, like, why are these things happening? They shouldn't be happening. It's more like, oh, these are the adventures, right? These are the
Mm-hmm.
problems, these are the challenges, and these are the exciting things you'll do too. And so, how can we take that all as like, okay, we're on this adventure, hunting for this treasure, and this is just all, like, to your point, all part of it. And how do we bring the adventurous spirit to it? That kind of like childlike, not only wonder, but fearlessness. Like fearlessness is really what I wish for everyone, right? And fearlessness in self, to be yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of one framing. Uh, the second, I immediately had two more come up, and so I'm like, oh, like maybe if I can just quickly share three. One will be very fast. One of the most valuable questions that I've ever had to answer for myself, and has been as a core exercise, and then has been continually helpful since for micro moments, is what are you unwilling to feel? Because the thing that
Oh.
people avoid feeling, and so often, so many behaviors or habits or thoughts and beliefs are oriented around that question, around the thing that they're trying to avoid. And it's usually a very deep-rooted thing. It's a very core identity thing. It's a very core experience thing. But most often, when we are in that seized, overwhelmed state, burnout, trying to control all the tactics that we have, it's usually because we're trying to avoid some experience, a sense of
Mm-hmm.
failure, a fear of uncertainty, insecurity, right? The unknown. And so the more that we are willing to go into that space and really understand what it is we're avoiding and unwilling to feel, the faster we can actually resolve it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're so oriented around avoiding it that the minute you recognize, oh, here's what it actually is, And it's not about sitting in your feelings, right? Which a lot of people think, like, I'm not good at sitting in my feelings.
Mm-mm.
Like, no, the point is to get to the insight so you know what to action. So for all the achievers and the doers, I'm like, this is actually an achievement-oriented thing. It's a doing-oriented thing. Because then that'll inform more accurate, sustainable action. Because then
Mm-hmm.
you're really addressing root cause.
Yeah,
Um, and
I love
the
it.
third, the last one, the bonus one, because both came to mind at the same time, is that purpose is not like a job and it's not a role and it's not like a thing you have to go do, right? Purpose, the way that I work with the concept with my clients is more oriented around like being. It's your reason for being.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of people, it will translate into every aspect, not a lot, everyone, it will translate into every aspect of their life. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just in your work, though it can be. It's not just in your relationships, though it can be. So, for example, for mine, I have always been oriented around wanting to understand the truth of things.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the experience that I had growing up, it was so like, it just felt like we're operating on this surface level stuff and we're responding to all this stuff that actually isn't real. And so I was just kind of like, what is the truth here? What is actually happening here? And so I've always wanted to understand that so that I can take a better path forward for myself. And
Mm-hmm.
so my understanding of my purpose is to help people see the truth in themselves, right? And understand what's true for them in them.
Mm-hmm.
So they can live and embody that and they can live true to purpose and self. Purpose being just why you're here.
Mm-hmm.
And for some other people that I've helped them clarify, it's like to help others feel less alone because I felt so alone. So it's first to help me feel less alone, and I want to help others feel less alone. You can do that
Yeah.
in your relationships. You can do that with strangers. You can do that in your work. And so I so want to remove this heavy notion of like purpose is like, oh, my life's calling. I'm like, you can understand it as that, but it doesn't have to be, right? It's more the embodiment of your being, of
Mm-hmm.
the person that you are, and your most honest, true expression of it. And at the core function, it's actually survival. Everyone's purpose is to survive, right? But because we live
That
in
that's the underlying theme. And then
yes,
there's some other, yeah, there's some other thing. And it's so funny because I had someone ask me, a dear friend of mine at one point years ago, because I'd never thought about the question before, what is your purpose? It's to help people. And it can be that simple.
yes,
It can be that simple.
yeah,
So I think
absolutely.
part of it too is don't overcomplicate it. It's not the Ten Commandments. It's not
Yes,
anything like that. It literally is just listen to yourself and whatever
yeah,
comes, and then it evolves over time.
yeah,
And I think the main message is get connected to it. Just
yeah.
like to your point, ask a question. I love the questions that you did. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm sitting
Mm.
here just listening, going, yes, yes, okay, that's a great way to frame that. Because to your point, we are saying so many similar things, and the approach is slightly different because we all have our own personality, if you will,
Hmm.
on how it came to be, how the lessons came to be, how we engage with people.
Hmm.
And I love being in the room with you and learning. So thank you.
Thank you,
Um,
Michelle.
yeah.
I learned
Uh,
just from the conversations we've had, I've also learned so much, both in terms of resonance, but also just slight ways to think about it a little differently, right? Even though our approaches are really similar,
mhm.
it's also where we like emphasize like the time that we spend with our clients. And so hearing some of the ways that you work with your clients has been really valuable to me.
Yeah,
Because we need to always like keep improving and
we
understanding
do. And
different
I
ways
take
in.
nuggets forward. It's like I'm taking notes and I'm like, oh my God, I do like the way that question. It's like, yes. Thank you. And I
Thank
cannot wait for the
you.
next time.
Me
This has been Leadership
too.
Sound Bites. Like, share, subscribe, topics. I'll put, how to get connected with Pam on LinkedIn.
Mm,
So you can reach out. And so until next time, have a freaking awesome day. Thank you.
thank you, Michelle. Thank you for making the effort and the space and the time to have these conversations and to
Yeah.
share it with people. I know you
Yeah.
enjoy doing it, so
It's
it's
well,
a
because I
passion for
freaking
you.
learned so much. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
I look forward to next time with you, ma'am.
Same. Yeah.
Okay.